My name is Bill Burke. I'm the director of AP's U.S. Video Products. Joining me today for the call is Anna Johnson, who is our Regional News Director for AP in the West region of the United States, and also Paul Haven, who is the AP News Director in Latin America and the Caribbean, and both of them have been involved in projects here that we'd like to tell you about today. So in terms of our agenda, I'm going to spend a little bit of time just talking about some video market headlines, but the meat of the presentation today will be how the AP has been working to make video part of the daily content plan. For many people, video is a secondary format, and we've worked really hard to make it integral to what we do. So we're going to explain how we did that. And we're also going to look at some innovative approaches, we think they're innovative, to video storytelling, in particular, a project that Paul and his team did. And as I said, we'll have some time for Q&A at the back end. So in terms of the marketplace today, I think we can certainly stipulate that a high demand continues for video storytelling. There's more sites doing video today. More of them, I think, are successful. There's new platforms that have, over the last year, significantly expanded, the last couple of years, significantly expanded their use of video, Facebook, Twitter, and others. There are new producers, lots happening on the video front. So there's high demand for video storytelling. And the good news is that the tools with which you can make those videos are getting more accessible and easier. So some of the things we're going to show you today rely very heavily on iPhone video. And there's also tools that are web-based or others that make editing really very simple. So it's not just a process for long-time video professionals anymore. It's becoming more widespread. That's true here at AP, and I think it's true elsewhere. And what you're seeing out there, though, kind of the downside of that is, especially on what we call the consumer-ready side, so the digital side, there's a flood of video. It's just thousands and thousands of videos, very short cycle of being able to get in on a big breaking story, lots of competition. Back in the day, 8 or 9 years ago, when we started doing consumer-ready videos, we used to think about 24 hours as kind of the window of a big story. I don't know whether it's the circumstance of the story that have changed or just the ecosystem with respect to video, but today, when something big breaks, if you're not out there with some stories on it in the first couple hours, it's likely you're going to miss that wave. Now, that's not always true, and things will vary from case to case, but the amount of competition, the number of people who have access to things, getting greater, and that makes it a little bit more difficult. In that respect, and this kind of leads us to why we picked this topic today, we at the AP believe that a big part of our what we want to do as output is something that can help us stand out. No question that everybody wants breaking news, the big stories of the day, especially in an online context, the things that people are talking about, the things that people want to see, got to have those. But at the same time, we think that an effective presentation of digital video involves having things that are exclusive to you or that are distinctive to your particular style. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about a little today. AP has long been a big provider of video, but we're also, as I'm sure you all know, an organization that has a lot of people who are not video natives. And so one of the things that we've had as a goal for a couple of years now has been to broaden out those capabilities. In particular, in the United States, a strategic goal is to increase the amount of regional video we have. So Anna Johnson is joining me first to talk about a project that's been underway for almost 2 years in all out west in order to increase our regional video. That was the goal. We wanted to train multimedia journalists, these are people who were either print reporters or photographers or for whom video was not necessarily their first format. And we also wanted to make sure that we spur innovation and be able to understand and use new platforms like Twitter and Facebook, as I mentioned earlier. So Anna's here, and I'll turn it over to her, and she can tell you a little bit about what we did.
Great. Thank you so much, Bill. So our project here, we probably started in the West region of the U.S. In earnest about 1.5 years ago, and it involved a iPhone app called Videolicious. Now, that's one app. There's plenty out there, and phones, it's just a whole, I mean, it mostly was focused on just shooting video with your phone. And I think our experience and what we learned from it is really universal to any video initiative at any news organization. When we first started out, we made a really conscious decision to start small and ramp up slowly and deliberately. Instead of, introducing all these video tools to everyone in our region, we, selectively chose smaller groups and would go through some training with them, and then would let them sort of experiment with it, start to learn how to use, start to shoot video, how to use this new app that helped us do a little bit of editing. And that really helped. And it allowed us to sort of start with smaller groups in each of our bureaus. And, maybe it'd be one person or two people who I will say were all text or photo journalists who, some had shot some video in the past, some, in their personal lives, at home or whatnot, but most had not done a whole lot. And we introduced the video app and the training mostly over, webinars and that sort of thing, and did small chunks. And what this did is then we would, after, maybe 10 or 12 people would get some training and try it out for a few weeks and start shooting some videos and getting feedback. And then we'd kind of, increase it maybe by 10 more people. And we particularly picked, if someone in one bureau had gotten the training and had been doing pretty well, we sort of made them a mentor. And then we bring on someone else, in their same office who, or same department who could then work with them. And this really helped create sort of a mentor network, which was exceedingly important because, oftentimes the best sort of learning that you get is sort of one-on-one and to kind of troubleshoot together. And, a photographer in, one bureau might have learned a trick. For example, we have a really great photographer in Seattle who learned a few tricks with the app, and then he would show, someone else in his bureau or department there, how to do something and then share it with the wider group. And that really helped us all learn together and made it very, very manageable. And, one thing I'll also know along with this is that it increased our video awareness, just incredibly. And we, and through the process, though, not just in shooting our own video, it also just made us more aware of video in general. So now we have journalists who probably never really looked at a story and said, that's a video story. Is there great video out there? Who has the video? Can I get, video from, what we call UGC, user-generated content, or handout from somewhere that might help illustrate the story? And now that's happening, more and more. The results over this 1.5 years or so has been better than expected. And we've trained, all in all, by starting sort of that small and moving up, we've trained about 70 people who've increased their ability to shoot video and edit video. And then, probably our video capabilities at least 3 or 4 times on an average day now. We're producing about 3 or so traditional, broadcast video stories that we send out to customers on AP Video US. And then about 5 videos, some of them being similar, some of them different, that we're using, for social promotion purposes on Twitter as sort of an experimental way of doing things. And we are gathering double, if not more, user-generated video and photos and looking for interesting handout to fill out the report. And, every week we have at least 1 or 2 success stories, and we're continuing to build upon that. I wanted to next sort of, just to give you an example of what we've been doing recently, show you a couple of videos. The first is just a fantastic example by a reporter, Scott Smith, who's based in Fresno, California. He is primarily a text reporter, had a really great writer, and had been shooting some photos for us and had wanted to do some video. And he came across this story in his reporting about how authorities had arrested a man who they say stole $1 million worth of beehives, which is a pretty incredible story. So he went out, and in the course of reporting, he shot video. He worked with, he talked it through. He did some front loading, and came up with this video that we sent out both on for social media. We also, this went out to all of our customers on AP Video US as well. And it's just a really fantastic example. It's pretty simple. It you know, really kind of shows you something different, something you don't normally see on a story that can't recall the last time we wrote a story about stolen beehives, or at least that many stolen beehives. And I will note, in this case, he not only shot the video, he shot the photos and wrote the text story.
That's great, yeah, and that also explains why we saw the picture of the bee on the previous slide, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to look at this other one.
Yeah, this is an example of a different kind of video, and what I mentioned earlier about, you know, just people being more aware, our staff being more aware of just video in general. This was a story that happened. We did not cover it. I think it happened over a weekend, but a reporter working on it saw that the university had handed out video and had video that we could use. And so they asked for it, we got permission, and we put together this video piece that about this college graduation day and the surprise that happened for this mother. And I will note that it was obviously just a very human interest story, and it got about 22,000 retweets, which for us at, you know, in the West region of the AP is the biggest, most retweeted story we've had yet. So, and it really took not a whole lot of effort.
Who the faculty, the administration, and the Board of Trustees have decided to honor with an honorary MBA degree.
That's a great story, and it goes to your point on about
Mrs. Judith O'Connor has attended all the classes with her son Marty, who just received his MBA. She has taken notes and worked with Marty throughout his academic career. Oh shoot!
That's my favorite part, the oh shoot. But this makes your point earlier that you know, this is something we didn't shoot, but we probably wouldn't have been sensitive to it had we not been in a position of doing the things we've been doing.
Absolutely, Bill. And in this particular story, we may have covered it for text. We may have asked for a photo a year or two ago. But in this case, I think the first thing we asked to try to do on here was to try to get this video. And that's what really makes the story. I mean, it's a touching story no matter what, but it's that video, it's watching it and then listening to that announcer, you know, break down in tears that really grabs you. And, you know, it's hard to look away. So in doing this, you know, the question is, you know, how did we do this? And it was definitely not easy. On the left, you can see this is sort of how it used to work when we would do story planning in the West region. We'd often start with some sort of text story idea with the text reporter and their manager or news leader who was generally from a text background. And then we would sort of think about the photos and then maybe the video. Video was often an afterthought. It was left sometimes even just sort of, well, we'll leave that to our broadcast department to think about, or for the video, you know, for our VJ or video journalists to think about. You know, it wasn't ingrained as part of, you know, our everyday conversations. But now what we do is we're thinking about visually driven digital stories all the time. And it's the expectation for every news manager to be responsible for video planning, and that for every journalist in our region to consider video with every story they pitch, whether it's an enterprise story or a spot story, basically everything we do. And I have a really great example that just played out this week in our region, and that was with this insane heat wave we're having here in Phoenix, where it got up to 119 yesterday, lucky us. And what we did from the start with this is we knew the heat was difficult to show. It's not like a blizzard or a tornado and there's all this great visuals. The heat looks just like every other day. But we knew it would be an important story. The numbers would be shocking. It obviously has a huge impact on a lot of people. So we thought from the start, how can we show this story? We weren't worried so much about how the text would come together right away. We were more concerned about the visuals on this. How could we actually show the heat and get a real feel for how hot it was? And our news manager here who oversees the Southwest and 2 reporters came up with a really clever idea. They thought, well, you know what, let's follow the most in-demand person in Phoenix right now, and that is the air conditioner repair worker. And so they organized it ahead of time. They found someone who was going to allow us to go out there in all formats and follow him around for, several hours under the blazing sun as he went from house to house, fixing someone's air conditioning, hauling up this giant air conditioner on somebody's roof, and all of these customers who were just ecstatic and relieved that they would finally get some relief from being inside their sweltering homes. And along with that and some other planning, we delivered a really nice package of video stories this week that did more than just sort of showed, the usual like sprinklers or something during a heat wave. And that's just sort of one example of how it's really become really, really ingrained. I think in order to do this, it really starts from the beginning. You start asking the questions about your story. And you have to say, have you considered video? What can we do about this? And it really has to be intentional and deliberate. It has to be something you do all of the time, not just some of the time. Even if at the end of the day you decide, you know what, there is not a video option. Not every story is going to have video. But at least that we've thought about it, considered it, and made a decision not to do it. One of the ways that we did this, and we started doing this, was on our daily news call that we would have with everyone. We used to discuss video at the end. Like, we'd go through all the stories, and then we'd say, okay, what are we doing in video? As if it was like a separate thing from the other stories that we were doing. And now, as I mentioned in the heat wave, we're leading those story discussions often with video plans or photo plans. And so, every time, we've made a bigger emphasis in our daily calls, in our planning emails, our other written communication. And it took a lot of me reminding myself, sticking up post-its like, don't forget video, don't forget video, so that we could just automatically start to do it. And another thing is to just, be specific as possible, not to say, yeah, we'll do video, yeah, we'll have a photo. It's to really talk about what it is that we're actually going to do. We even had when we first started out, a second video planner that even had more information that we updated frequently. And this was a constant reminder to people that this was a priority. And at the end of the week, we recapped it with an email that showed what kind of video we did do that week to remind folks of everything we had done and to kind of constantly show that this was important and something that we were, going to continue to spend a lot of time on. Along with that, and a huge part of this was the detailed feedback that we made sure that we were giving people before they went out to shoot video, during their video. They might be out in a story and we'd give feedback about what was working or some other ideas, and then certainly afterwards as well. We integrated this into our daily routines. We had a Google Doc spreadsheet to make sure we were doing this. And it really ensured that people were always learning, people in the field and people back at the desk, so that we could kind of troubleshoot. If someone went out and shot something and tried something with like a new microphone and then it didn't work, we'd talk about it and then try something different the next time. And if it did work, we made sure that was also noted in there as well, so we could tell people like, hey, if you do this with this kind of lighting, we often here in the West region there's a lot of sun, and that can be an issue with video. And so we shared a lot of examples of how it could work if you had to be outside and it was a really sunny day. And the more we talked about what worked and what didn't, the more it became, in the constant communication of stories, it really just became more and more ingrained into people, and we were all learning along the way. And, even just as important, we let people know when they did a good job. Oftentimes we were talking about what didn't work, but when someone succeeded and had a story that really worked, or did something that they hadn't done before, or went out and shot something for the first time and they had never ever shot video before, we let them know that what a success that was. And I think that made everyone feel like they were part of this, that it was important, that what they were doing was just not some sort of effort that was going to go nowhere, that it really was an integral part of what we were doing, and that we were here to help people get better and to help improve their skills along the way. We sent a lot of emails to individuals. We talked to individuals, but also to wider groups of people. We pointed out, when like our Twitter video would do really, really well, or when a big customer in a major market used one of their videos, when their audio got better, when they did something creative that had never, just to try it and really took them out of their comfort zone. And the more we told people about the cool stuff they were doing, the more those sort of best practices and interest in experimenting and doing something new really sunk in. And I think that led to us, honestly, having a lot of fun with this. A lot of the stories we do are really serious, but I think people want to be creative, and that this was an outlet for a lot of people to try to be creative, and still is an outlet to do that. And I think because we encouraged that and we wanted people to have fun with it, that they really did. And, you know, I'm not going to say every single person has embraced it, but a great majority have. And people are trying new things every single week, and it's just really, really, really exciting to see. And it's kept the enthusiasm high, you know, even as we're going into, you know, year 2 on a big video project like this.
That's great. And I think, you know, we all work under a lot of pressure. So just having something that is a little bit of a creative outlet and taking the time to, you know, sit back and reflect on it and also to have some fun, I think that is really good. So thank you for that. And we've got some questions coming in for you, but we'll come back to you. So please stand by. So we kind of have a two-part strategy emerging here. One is, you know, to make sure that the video process is really, you know, indistinguishable from our overall news gathering process. And the other is to try to identify as much as possible things that are good enterprise or investigative reporting. And everybody, you know, knows what that is, right? But the kind of slam dunk exclusives, the ones that, you know, everybody knows you got an exclusive. So we did one of our biggest this year was a sit-down interview with Casey Anthony, the first since she was found not guilty in the death of her daughter, you know, and we did one in North Carolina on a religious, what some people call a religious cult there, the Word of Faith. So those are easily identifiable. The challenge with those is you can't just order one up whenever you want to. So we try to look for a mix of things that are enterprise or things that we can time and that we can do. And in video, a couple of those that have turned out quite well, we think, are what I call let's go take a look stories. And it's really, you know, it's just sending people out with a camera and see what they find. So Paul Haven, who is our Latin American news director, is joining me now. And the picture that you're seeing here is Nogales, the city of Nogales. And it's actually, this is a still from a drone that we used in this story. And that's the fence going right down the middle of it. And the Tales from the Border was a 3,000-mile trek across the U.S.-Mexican border. And I'll let, we have a little montage from what we did on that, but I'll let Paul set it up and tell you how it came about. Paul?
Thanks so much, Bill, and thanks to everyone for being here. I'll just briefly set up the video you're going to see, and then we can talk about it a little bit afterwards. We had a challenge, as Bill said. Not everything is an exclusive, but what we wanted to do with this was do something different from the border. It's an area that's been reported on a lot, but we wanted to do something visual and we wanted to do something innovative. And from the very start, we saw this as an experiment. So we sent a 2-person team on a 3,000-mile trek across the border, zigzagging across the border multiple times, we pushed, we didn't actually send a VJ, but we pushed video and we pushed photos. We wanted to do something that really got inside and was an intimate look at the lives along the border. And so we can look at the video and then I'll talk a little bit about what we found.
Okay, thanks.
We're driving in Brownsville, Texas, in the southmost neighborhood near the border fence, where it cuts off a lot of people's land between the fence and the river. And just to give you an idea of how the border goes, it's nothing near a straight line. It's all in and out, in and out. And the fence runs in a relatively straight line. So you can see how much land it's leaving between the river and the fence. The shelters that in the past 2 years have been full of migrants, especially families from Central America trying to enter the U.S., are now virtually empty.
No importa si lo construyen o no lo construyen, la gente como quiera va a pasar de un modo o de otro. porque así ha pasado todos estos años.
We've seen a father talking to his daughter on the other side.
Viendo a mi tata.
¿Y por qué no lo puedes ver en persona?
Porque no tengo visa.
The wall that Donald Trump promises hasn't been built yet, but his words, just the idea of it, seem to be having some effect on people's decisions about whether to come.
Is it friendship? Is it love?
Que yo soy chicana porque soy mexicana y americana. Soy de los dos países.
We've arrived at the Pacific Ocean 3,000 miles later.
So basically, we envisioned this project as an experiment from the very beginning, and that gave us a lot of freedom. We sent a reporter and a Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer with basically, as Bill said, the remit was to go and see what you find. I mean, we mapped it out. There were security issues and stuff, but basically they were able to go inside people's lives and find interesting stories. This was presented as a blog, so we were trying to have something, and preferably something in all formats, every single day, which was, quite challenging. We can talk about the workflow at the end. But I think what was interesting about it is that we didn't just find vignettes and cool stories like the little girl who was talking to her father through the fence, but we also broke news, and I think sometimes just going there is the best way to actually find things out. So for instance, we were the first ones to report that the numbers at these shelters were way down from previous years, just based on the rhetoric coming out of the Trump administration. And we also, told some really wonderful stories like this school in New Mexico where a good percentage of the children actually are American citizens, but living on the Mexican side of the border and going over across the border every day. So, I'll just talk about a little bit of this spirit of it, and it kind of gets back to what Anna was saying. We've also been trying to change the culture of our staff in Latin America and push the importance of video. And so with this project's become a bit of a recruiting tool for us because, we didn't actually send a video journalist. Most of the images, except the drone shots that you see, were shot with an iPhone. So, this is something virtually anybody can do if they're interested and they're passionate about it and they want to learn. Many people say the video shot with an iPhone by a photographer was virtually broadcast quality. And in fact, although this was a blog, several of the stories did go out to our broadcast clients and were well used. Rodrigo Apt was the photographer. Chris Sherman was the reporter. They used virtually every visual storytelling technique. And again, it was fun, they did photos, they did video. We had a time-lapse photography. We did 360 video and photos. As you saw, we used drones. And we even used an old-fashioned box camera to do several portraits when the team got to Tijuana. So it was a really fun experiment. And I think as we try to encourage our photographers and our print native reporters to embrace video, this project, which, what a great assignment to travel for 2 weeks across the border in a rented car, telling the stories that you find. It's kind of a dream assignment for anyone. This project, and that was very well received, has been kind of our exhibit A of what can be done and why others in the region, other reporters in our region, should be, and rather than being afraid of video, should be embracing it and trying to experiment themselves.
The other thing that we didn't put in there was one of my favorites was they stayed at an Airbnb teepee, which we should have put in a shot of that, but that was very interesting. But I think to me the we've done a lot of work with iPhones, and as Anna said, some of it, is good, and some of it is less good, and some of that has to do with the device itself. But you could see in that story, what you could do with that in the hands of somebody who has a really great, photographic eye. Yes. So, all right. Well, we're ready for some questions. We've had a couple come in, but again, if you want to type them, you just go down and hover your mouse over the question area, and you can plug them in. The first one is about, Anna, you talked about a culture change, and this took a long time. Did you find it got easier as it went along, or was it a continual sort of battle to keep people enthused over? Because I personally have seen this. A lot of big organizations, they kind of move slowly, and things start out fast and then lose ground later. So tell us a little bit more about sort of the maintenance process as that grew.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's still not easy sometimes, but that's why we started up small, and we didn't make any at the. We really didn't put we were trying not to put pressure on the folks to that their stuff, we set expectations kind of low in the sense of we didn't promise people that the video that they shot was definitely going to go out to the customers, because we couldn't guarantee that we'd have the quality to do that. And so when it did, it was, we got really excited about it, because that meant something, we'd gone above and beyond. And over time, we have had some lulls. I won't lie about that. We did, last fall was a bit tricky. We kind of, with the elections, it just was so busy. And I think people were, we're just busy. I mean, it was just incredibly busy in every state and nationally. And we kind of had a bit of a lull around some of the election, post-election, sort of in that, aftermath. And we're like, all right, I'm going to go on vacation finally. So we did a little jump start around that time, and kind of did a mini pilot in a pilot and focused heavily on California for about 3 weeks, where we tried, we kind of said, let's see what we could do if we went like full out video, and really, put a huge emphasis on our busiest state, where we do have more staff and there's a lot more breaking news. And that kind of helped invigorate it, and mostly because we did this big push. It lasted about 3 weeks. And at the end, we realized that initially, I think we went into it thinking if we were going to try to have a video like almost every single day, that seemed like it was impossible. But actually, towards the end, it became almost every day. It really wasn't that difficult. And it kind of helped us realize that we could do this over a sustained a longer time, and that it wasn't going to take a ton of effort. And that really helped kind of invigorate everyone and got us into the new year. So there have been sort of ups and downs, and then we've tried something new or have experimented with something else to kind of really right now, we're trying to get more people learning how to edit video, which I think will help. That's sort of a big push we have at the moment, because while we're shooting all this video, we don't always have enough people to edit and to help produce the videos. So we're making a big push on that effort at the moment, which I think is sort of just another way to kind of keep it going and to look for that next challenge to kind of make sure that we're continuing to progress instead of just, kind of coming to a lull and then, dropping off. So, that's sort of our current push is really on the editing and production side of things. And of course, the other big push is we have recognized probably about anywhere from 5 to 10 of our text and photo journalists who have really shown an eye for this and have been very enthusiastic. We are making a huge push now to get them sort of that next level of training so that they can start to do some more ambitious projects and be able to do more editing on their own instead of just turning in a lot of their raw material.
I'm glad you mentioned that about production, because that really is a key part, and that's one of the things that we're, as the manager of the product side of this, we help with this, and that is in the past, we kind of, our video production tended to be concentrated in hubs where we had lots of people, but you find out very quickly that if you've got 100 people with phones out in the field, and all of a sudden, hundreds of people start sending in video. So we do have a process underway that is going to, what I call, democratize the production. So the production goes out there, so closer to the daily coverage, understanding better what the news is at that location, but also able to produce it and to file it or to post it, whatever the platform requires, and that way you keep your speed up, which is very important. So we had a question about the number. What kind of numbers did these stories get? And that's actually an interesting point. One of the things about the CR, or what we call consumer ready, we're on lots of different platforms. People buy the video and put it on different newspaper sites or niche sites or whatever. We also have a YouTube channel like many other people. And what you find is that, it will vary significantly depending upon what the platform is. In general, the experience is that a lot of those things are driven by breaking news. So, if there's a terrorist attack someplace or a big event, people will go on and search for that thing, and that, so the breaking news kind of gets sucked up into that. So you do have to have, I think, a strategy. In our case, because we provide this material to customers using their own way, and we also put it on some of our own places. You've got to have a strategy to make sure that people know it's coming and what it is, and especially if it's something a little bit different, that they understand that it's coming out. And, oh, this is kind of, it's like a travel log. Okay, we could run a series of these things, but they will do pretty well. And a couple of those travel logs did in the neighborhood of 8,000 or 9,000 streams on YouTube, which is above the average that you normally see there, and they were well used elsewhere. So that's true. There was also a question about, in general, what works, and we've been doing a consumer-ready video for a long time, so we get a lot of feedback on that, and I think we've been able to kind of boil it down. So breaking news usually at the top there, but it's really centered around kind of like breaking news, then kind of the stories that people are talking about, and that, of course, is a very general, a general concept. There can be a lot of different things in there. For example, this year, politics, which might have been considered a couple of years ago a little bit more of a traditional hard news kind of thing, has now become, part of the conversation a little bit more broadly. So, whatever people are talking about any given day, that's always going to be popular. We find that lifestyle things are very popular. Health, personal finance, the quirky. There's no question that in online video, the quirky, and that's why we try to have at least 2 or 3 representatives from the animal kingdom per day of some sort. You got to have those, and we just try to look for good features. But again, on the feature side and the distinctive video side, you're going to have to look carefully at how you promote those and where you put them. Now, one advantage of that is that some of these have a longer shelf life, like these Tales from the Border, although they're a little bit newsy, so they could be dated. But generally, things that are not as closely tied to breaking news may have a little bit longer shelf life. So even though they might not have the quick hit that a breaking news thing might have, they can stay on there longer. Paul, there's a question here that I thought would be good for you. You mentioned that you kind of use this as a teaser, I guess, and creating a sense of other people wanting to do that. And someone asked about how you decided, how you use that to sort of increase the interest.
Yeah. Well, let me just say first on usage. On these Facebook, we put these videos out on Facebook, and the top one got almost 30,000 views. There was a wide range, but I think between all the videos, we got about 150,000 views. Pretty pretty good. And as you say, they've got a long shelf life. Some of them are still relevant, even a couple of months later. But I would say, you know, in terms of changing the culture, I think that there's a lot of fear around video. I'm a text native myself, and I can speak from my own experience that I found video to be a scary thing, you know, technically, and in terms of what makes a good video story. And I think, you know, we've been on this path for a while as well here, just as Anna has in the West. And I think we've removed some of that fear. People are we're trying to get people more familiar with video. I think that if you present this as a kind of, it's hard to fail, you know, you give people room. The pressure is not so great. You know, there's going to be things that work and things that don't work. It helps a lot. And obviously not everyone, you know, not everyone is going to take to it, but most people do. And particularly we've had success with photographers who obviously have, you know, great visual skills and often can use their cameras now for video. So, you know, so I think that showing people success and emphasizing the success rather than the inevitable failures or you know, fall downs is really the best way. And maybe in 5 years we'll be in a different place where we can be a bit more exacting of people. But I think for now we see everything that wins as a plus.
Okay, we have a question about captions on video, and I don't mean by that closed caption, but the titling captions like the ones that were on the B video. And the question is whether or not that, you know, how popular that is, or is it getting more popular? There's no question, I think, that it is getting more popular. You know, we're actually we've been sort of experimenting with different versions of that. I think ultimately we'll probably come up with something that looks like a, you know, a general template that people can use, and that you're going to see a lot more of that on the consumer-ready side. Of course, one of the reasons is that many people are looking at these in mobile devices where they're not necessarily able to listen to video or want to listen to audio of the report. Anna, you all, I think, have become very effective at using Twitter in particular, and using those titles. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, that learning process and how you, you know, learn to do things that work there?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I will note through this whole project, we went in mostly focused on the shooting of the video, the actual, you know, in the field, and what has happened as an interest in, you know, across the board is by shooting more video and doing more of this, actually some of the folks on the desk and on the editing hub that we have based in Phoenix, who are primarily text editors, this just sparked an interest in video as well. And a lot of them wanted to start to learn how to edit video. So that's, you know, kind of simultaneously started, you know, learning how to teach primarily text editors how to edit video as well. And one of the ways that we really have done that, and the exclusive really way, is on doing social videos. And we recognize that a lot of people, when looking on their phones, and the reason why we add subtitles, captions, types of things to our videos is because obviously people don't listen to everything when they're looking at their phone, and they need to be able to understand the video. And so we just started to experiment around that idea, and started editing kind of short videos and adding a little bit of text on it. And now we've gotten pretty good, and we can put together an entire video piece that we will add the subtitles or captions to kind of tell the story, or explain what, you know, really fully, you know, transcribe what a person is saying in the video. It helps us also when we don't have every perfect element of a video, because if we can add some text over it, it can kind of, you know, move people from one thing to the next, and it helps smooth that out a bit. And so that's sort of been a simultaneous project that we've been doing here, using a variety of different things. We're now, there's been a couple questions about some of the technical things on the phone side. On the shooting of video, we used an app called Videolicious that is also available on Android. I don't think it's just for iPhone. It does allow you to edit a little bit, but then back at the desk in the production hub, we were able to get a couple Macs and got Adobe Premiere and started teaching, people started sort of teaching themselves how to use it and how to put text over the video. And it's working really well, and we're getting more and more advanced along those lines. And it's been great. One nice thing about Twitter, for example, is you get a lot of feedback. I mean, you see immediately what works, what might not work. Your statistics and numbers are right there for you. And, you know, obviously as breaking news and quirky raw video works really well, but the same sort of things that work for a great video story work well on social too. Interesting characters and compelling visuals and compelling stories with people who, a person or a couple of people who are really interesting and engaging, and those work really well on social media too.
Yeah. We had a question from someone about how to start a team and whether or not it should be in the newsroom, and I have a couple thoughts on that, and then I'll maybe open it up to you guys. I think the first thing you kind of have to do if you're, let's say you're starting from scratch, you've got to look at, you know, what is your marketplace and what, you know, kind of what do you think you can do, right? What does it make sense to do? If it's going to be a small team, you know, it's not going to, let's say you're in a, you know, a medium-sized market with some spot news, you know, it is probably not going to be, you know, you're not going to have enough people to chase all the spot news. You know, you could have a partnership that could get you some of that stuff, or you could, you know, pick a certain kind of thing. You're going to get one or two sort of spot news things per day, the best of, if you will, from your marketplace. And that would, you know, give you people who come to your site the sense that they're, you know, there's something they're going to find out there that is, you know, kind of newsy, but then you could, you know, augment that with, you know, whatever your strength might be. I mean, and as you look across what people are doing, you know, in newspapers sometimes, you know, it's all about expertise. So, you know, you might have just sort of the pictures of something, but then, you know, your local experts talking about, you know, analysis or whatever. Many people do that in sports. So I think a lot of how you build your team is going to depend upon what your goals are. And I think generally you want to try to have a mix of things that are sort of happening today that you can chase after, but then also ones that you know, you kind of set your own agenda. Whether or not they're in the newsroom, they don't have to be in the newsroom. Again, there's lots of moving parts and pieces, you know, so where's it going to get edited? As Anna mentioned, you know, all of this stuff can certainly be done on a laptop. I think I would ask you, Anna, but my opinion is that, you know, the iPhone editors, they're a little crude in the sense that there's just not a lot of, you know, a lot of space to work with. So that's really more, it's kind of, I think they've been more effective for raw materials. So, you know, if you've got people in the field, or let's say you have bureaus or something like that, and those people can, you know, take some pictures. FTP is a transport that works just fine. You know, there's other ways to get that material to whoever's going to edit it. So you got to kind of work out sort of the content piece, what you think you can do, and then sort of the production piece. And then I would say for a small team, I would want to have at least one person, not who's necessarily, you know, been a TV journalist per se, but just someone who has, you know, some real solid video experience, and so that you can you know, build upon their expertise as they did in Anna's case. Do you have anything to add to that, Anna?
Yeah, I mean, the small, you know, the teams, I would agree. I mean, Bill, you mentioned with the iPhone, I mean, one thing we come up with all the time with cell phones is storage capacity. It's a huge problem in video. And we've struggled against this. We tried to get people iPhones with larger storage capacity, and that is just always a problem. And so, you know, whether it's Videolicious, which does have a free version, iMovie, which comes with the iPhone, is also, you know, is a pretty decent, you know, kind of basic video editing app. These things can be done from the field and kind of put together a very kind of rough cut of something. But generally, because a lot of times because of the storage issues, we try to get people to get things off of their phone and onto a computer because, or onto some sort of cloud, because it can be really cumbersome, and often a bulk of the editing needs to be done, you know, from a laptop or, you know, in an office somewhere. But, you know, doing that stuff is pretty accessible. You know, Bill mentioned FTP. There's a free thing called WeTransfer, which is very easy to use. You know, you can also send it through things like Slack and all of that. So we do a variety of things on any given day, and but that can be a challenge, and sort of it's a bit of mixture of both. But in our case, almost, you know, we have in the West region, out of 130 or so journalists, we have, you know, 5 who shoot video who are VJs, and that's their first job. So everyone, it's a second thing. It's a second format or a third format for them. And, you know, and thus far, you know, if you say 70 or 80 of them are shooting video on at least a somewhat regular basis, that's, you know, I think it proves that you can train people from other formats with the right training and feedback to be able to do this.
But it's also not just the people who are shooting the video. Paul, one of the things that when we talked that I noted was the number of people who had to be sort of participating in a support capacity while the 2 guys were out on the road.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's more, there's a lot of work behind the scenes to make it look easy for those 2 guys. I mean, it wasn't easy because they spent 16 days together in a car and in a teepee and in motels, but technically, the video was shot on the iPhone. We just used the iPhone camera. We didn't use Videolicious, and all of the editing on the video was done here in Mexico City, and same for the text and the photos. And because this was a blog, that workflow was a little challenging. It's not something the AP has done a lot of in the past. So and of course these guys had to report, but they also had to travel the length of the border, which with the crisscrossing many times was about 3,000 miles. So that's a lot of driving every day. So what we did was we had them, you know, try to get to some place with a Wi-Fi connection every night and send their material. We used Slack, we used FTPs, and that would come into Mexico City, and we would edit, for instance, the video, you know, on professional. We had a VJ do the editing, and we spent a lot of time on it. So there was a lot of work that went in behind the scenes. But I was going to say one thing, which is, you know, my top video guy here in Latin America, who I've learned a lot from, you know, said the challenge isn't so much teaching people to edit in the field, because you can have an editor do that. It's sequencing. It's making sure that people learn what it takes to have a successful video story. What are the elements? And it's just like teaching, you know, a young journalist, a young print journalist, what are the elements in a print story? And one of the things I found is, obviously there are some print stories that don't work for video, but most really good print stories are character driven. There's a central, you lead with someone, there's a central person. And it's not that different really from what makes a good video story. And so, you know, for us, the challenge was making sure that Rodrigo and Chris understood what we would need to make their material look good. And obviously, if it's not in the material they send, we can't put it in there. But if it's there and it's out of sequence or whatever, we can fix all of that here. And so that's what we did.
That's a really good point, Paul.
Yeah, that is. And speaking of the training, we had someone ask a question, and I'll throw this out to both of you. If you were hiring somebody, would you, you know, do you think it's fair to sort of expect the journalists of the future to have those skills to begin with, video skills?
I can take this first if you want. Absolutely. I mean, obviously, we're all committed to what we call format excellence, and there are people who are so wonderful as print reporters or photographers or whatever that they're worth it. But in a world of shrinking budgets and shrinking staffs, which is what we all face, the truth is, for Latin America, have put versatility as one of the top things on my list when we do have a chance to hire someone. And, you know, that doesn't have to be formats. I mean, we have found a few people who can write in Spanish and English, and we found some people who can do video and text. I mean, that's like getting two hires out of one. And so I think you can't go too far to the point where you have somebody who can do all 3 things in a mediocre way. But if you can find somebody that has more than one skill, and particularly if video is one of them, absolutely, I think that's a huge plus and something we look for.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, and even in the case, you know, to me, let's say you're looking for someone for something specialized, like a data journalist. And those skills are what you're really looking for. I still want to see, though, the willingness to try and to learn and to, because I think, I hope we're at a point now that if any one of our staff members, managers included, were the first one to show up at some major breaking story, that they would know to get their phone out immediately and start shooting video and not even think twice about it, not even question it, just do it. And in order to, and that's sort of the expectation. And so in addition to, looking for those types of versatile skills, it's also sort of the real willingness and showing that you have the willingness to learn new things, because, right now we're teaching people how to shoot video on their phones. In 5 years, it might be something different, and sort of being curious and having that desire to want to learn how to do things differently and take journalism, down different ways of presenting it is really critical.
Okay. We had a question about the length of pieces, and I would just offer on that, in general, for the consumer-ready short form, what you're seeing is, in the neighborhood of, it depends. If it's raw video, what we call raw video, things blowing up, things getting wet, things falling down, 45 seconds to a minute max. If it's a package or has some sound, and I generally like to let people complete a full thought. So that's good. And what we see, YouTube and other platforms give us statistics on how much of each piece people watch. And what we find is, if the stuff is compelling, like the lady who got the MBA, I mean, that as a chunk doesn't really matter how long that is. It was just compelling and it was worth watching. But I think in general, you're probably looking for, something in the neighborhood of raw videos in the neighborhood of 45 to a minute. Things that are sound bites may be a little bit longer than that, but it will vary. Anna, you have a lot of experience on Twitter, probably a little shorter on Twitter in general.
It can depend, actually. An interesting thing we've learned, so if you're doing just like obviously if you have raw video, whatever the most compelling part of a raw video, clip is, and if you're trying to promo a story, like you're trying to tease someone into clicking on your link, a little, you don't want to go 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes, because that's basically almost giving them the entire thing. You're kind of using it like a movie promo, right? And so it's a bit shorter, maybe 45 to maybe a minute or something. Now Twitter's starting this thing with putting ads before videos, and I know that actually sometimes changes our thought on social, even because if you're going to sit through a 30-second ad, then you only get 30 seconds of video, it leaves people feeling a little bit like, what happened here? So we've seen that even slightly longer videos, if that's the case, to 1.5 minutes or a little bit longer, can also still work for social media. But again, it's really about, if it's compelling, people will watch it. If it's not that interesting, or it's just like a person sitting there looking straight on it at the camera and nothing else happening, they'll quickly lose interest and click away.
There was a question about how things get uploaded. Actually, that's interesting because, of course, here at AP, we're a big organization. We feed a lot of different things. So we have systems where basically the people who produce the video are putting metadata. They cut the video, they associate that video with a text script that has all the information on it. And one thing we haven't really talked about is rights and restrictions. And that can actually be kind of a big deal in video, especially breaking news. If it's UGC or something like that, you might have a short-term agreement to use a video or something like that. So that information has to be passed along. So in our world, we cut the video, we link it to the text story, which includes the basic facts of the story, the headline, and so forth, and then we send that out to lots of different places. So you've got to kind of figure out what your method to do that is. If you're just strictly local and you want to upload stuff to multiple individual platforms, I would think that could that could slow you down a little bit. It's not too burdensome, is it, Anna, to file that stuff to multiple social media locations?
No, not usually. No, I mean, you know, it takes some time. It's mostly about often having just a plan around things. Not some things that might work for Facebook don't work as well for Twitter, and you know, you just kind of it's sort of having a plan. And I should note, I didn't mention this, along with video on social, since there's a lot of questions about that. We actually have a plan every day for what we're doing for social. And on enterprise stories, and I'm sure, you know, Paul with this Tales from the Border, definitely, I mean, there was a plan that you put in place ahead of time that allows for some flexibility, obviously, but, you know, it is a thought out process about what where you're, you know, what kinds of things you want to do for social media, how you're going to do it, the timing of it, and all of that, because it can really help, you know, get your story more attention and drive a lot more interest to it.
Okay. All right. So we're out of time here. We do have some other questions. There was one that I saw about live. Let me just mention quickly, we do offer live. Someone asked that question, so thank you for the plug. We do offer that, but there are also a lot of tools. Live View is one of them, where basically backpacks which allow you to go live, or even Facebook Live can be used at times. So, and those could, you know, those can both put you live on a social media platform, but you also get the material back in a way that could be recorded. So we'll follow up with anybody who has other questions that we didn't get to. Anna and Paul, thank you very much, both for your efforts in gathering video, but also for your time today. We appreciate it very much, and we thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.